Hello, everyone. We are live. We are The Novel Neighbor. We are a brick and mortar independent bookshop, women owned in St. Louis, Missouri. And today is Bookstore Romance Day, and we are joined by the incredible Alexandria Bellefleur.
Hi.
Alexandria, thanks so much for giving us your time on a very busy day.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we for Romance Bookstore Day, Bookstore Romance Day rather, if folks are local or if you are from anywhere else that you could be from, our local Bookstore Romance Day has been running all morning. We have 10% off our romance selection in person and a curated list online. And we also have some exclusive merch, a lot of very, very fun signed book plates, including from Alexandria, available on our shelves right now. And we're going to get into our little conversation. So Alexandria, thank you so much. You are the author of Written in the Stars and Hang the Moon. You're going to pitch them better than I can. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about your books?
Sure. So yeah, I write contemporary romance novels, generally featuring a sunshiny character and a grumpy character, kind of opposites attract romances. The series is set in Seattle. Written in the Stars is about an astrologer and an actuary who agree to fake date over the holidays in order to get their well-meaning but meddlesome families off their backs. And then Hang the Moon is set in the same world, and it features a hopeless romantic dating app creator who decides to recreate iconic dates from his favorite movies in order to convince his childhood crush that romance is not dead.
Those are some very, very solid pitches. I love Written in the Stars, and Written in the Stars has had quite a moment on Book Talk, which is definitely how I originally found it, and now lovingly put it into the hands of everybody who will listen to me talk about it upstairs, which is very fun. And then Hang the Moon, I didn't realize. So Written in the Stars, the characters in Hang the Moon are very, very present in. So can you, I hear you have a third one around the corner, and I just want to get that out of the way nice and early. Are those characters also related?
Yes, absolutely. So for anybody who has read Written in the Stars or Hang the Moon, book 3, Count Your Lucky Stars, is Margot's story. And Margot is the best friend of Elle, featured in Written in the Stars, and then becomes close to Brendan, the hero in Hang the Moon. And so you definitely see all of the characters from the first 2 books featured very, heavily in book 3 as well.
That's so fun. So how did you first come up with the idea of this series? In your mind, was it going to be a series or a standalone? When did this all start?
It was definitely my hope that it was going to be a 3-book series. I had it planned out, Elle and Darcy and Brendan and Annie and Margot and Olivia. It was definitely my plan to have that and kind of like present little Easter eggs in each book that would hopefully kind of hint to the readers who the future couple would be. So definitely my plan from the get-go to kind of have all 3.
That's awesome. And they've come out in such a condensed amount of time. So when did Written in the Stars come out? When did Hang the Moon come out? And when is Count Your Lucky Stars?
So Written in the Stars came out in November of 2020. Hang the Moon came out at the end of May of this year, 2021. And Count Your Lucky Stars will come out on February 1st, 2022. So it's definitely been a tight timeline, exciting, but, definitely keeping me busy, which has had its pros during the pandemic, kind of keeping my mind off what's been happening, in the world and just keeping me focused on my books, which has been nice.
When did you start writing? Like these books?
These books. So these books, I actually sold Written in the Stars on proposal. So I sold it with a synopsis and 3 chapters in July of 2019. And I finished it in, I want to say, November of 2019. And then, did my copy edits in the beginning of 2020.
Oh, that's so fun. And it is a holiday book. So I would definitely recommend as we're moving into the fall seasons. It's very fun. I read it at the beginning of this summer, and it was definitely warm outside. And I was like, oh, but I want it to be all wintry and fun.
Yeah, I've seen it on some lists for like, oh yeah, it's the perfect beach read. And I mean, I'm not going to complain. Like, if you want to read it on the beach, please read it on the beach. But
Read it on the beach.
yeah, but I definitely think that it would probably be best read during the winter or the fall, kind of those cozy vibes.
Absolutely. But I think it's super fun. And so I'm definitely seeing, like, as the holidays move around again, I think it'll be great to be able to kind of do all three.
Yeah.
So you started writing in 2019. How long did you sell it on proposal pretty quick after coming up with the idea? What inspired you to write these? Yes.
Yeah. So my original inspiration was a mashup of Bridget Jones's Diary and Pride and Prejudice, which Bridget Jones's Diary is already in kind of like an iteration of Pride and Prejudice. But I wanted to kind of take it a step further and modernize it to kind of like, the now. So kind of thinking what a Bridget Jones character would be like, what she would be doing. But it sold pretty quickly, which I feel very fortunate about. I think I was at a conference in July and I just went on sub to publishers shortly before that conference. And then I think I got my first offer the week I got home. So it was a very fast process, which I feel very fortunate about.
That's awesome. It is so fun, and I totally understand why. Are you a longtime romance reader yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. My first introduction to romance novels was I read Twilight YA romance back when I was in high school, so a while ago. And that kind of led to my foray into the romance subgenre of YA, reading that, and also then kind of writing fanfic for that.
Yeah.
And then I went to college and I kind of had a bit of time away reading what I wanted to read. And so when I graduated, I rediscovered kind of my joy, in reading. And I just dove into the romance genre and started reading, like a book a day.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of then my second reintroduction into romance.
You hear of so many people getting their inspiration from Twilight, or like their like initial love of romance, and I think that's so fun. I read it also for the first time. Like, my books are like original hardcovers, so torn up. And my little sister, because they just put it on Netflix, so my little sister is 16 and is reading them now for the first time, and she's like book clubbing them with her friends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to again make a whole new like generation of romance readers. So that's
I love that. Yeah, my spine for Twilight, I still have it. It's like it won't even stay open on a page. It's just like it's torn apart. I read it so many times. I saw it in theaters 10 times.
Yeah.
I was a twihard, and I have no shame in it because it cultivated so much joy and so much passion for the genre.
Oh, absolutely. And as a Pacific Northwest girl, it was close to home.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you really feel, so these books take place in Seattle, you really feel the Pacific Northwest is kind of a character in the novels. Can you talk a little bit about your love for the area and how that kind of manifested?
Yeah, definitely. I moved to Seattle for middle school, and then I grew up in Seattle from middle school through part of college. So it's the area that I'm most familiar with, the area that I consider home. And so this entire series, I would say particularly Hang the Moon, is kind of my love letter to Seattle. I just, even though I'm so familiar with the area, doing more research and realizing how many rom-com films are set in the area, it's just a gold mine. And so I wanted to make Seattle very present and kind of a character unto itself. And so I hope that came across.
Oh, it definitely does. And my favorite books are the ones where you feel like the location is almost a character. Like, it like comes to life so much. And you definitely feel that with this. And so the first thing I did, I was like, could I go to Seattle right now? So I definitely feel that. Who's been your favorite character to write in the series so far?
Oh, I feel like I put little tiny pieces of myself into every single character. But the character that I feel most attached to, not necessarily that we have the most in common, but the character that I feel most protective of is Margot. She's the type of person that says what's on her mind, and where other people, will filter themselves, she doesn't hold back. And she's so loyal, and she's a little prickly on the outside, but she has just the squishiest marshmallow interior. And so I really loved writing her in Count Your Lucky Stars. I feel like readers of Written in the Stars and Hang the Moon will get an entirely different glimpse of her interior life in Count Your Lucky Stars. And so I'm excited for people to kind of see that other side of her.
When I first saw that Count Your Lucky Stars was the third installment, it was going to be Margot's story, I was so excited because I really felt like Margot was one of those characters who jumped off the page. And I immediately latched on. And so I'm very, very excited to hear you say that she was your favorite to write and that you are very excited to explore that. And I also was so excited to see Annie in Hang the Moon. Like, just even her conversations with Darcy over the phone in Written in the Stars were very fun. So
yeah, I would definitely say that Annie is another character that I feel kind of like a kinship with. And I've heard that from other readers because I feel like a lot of Annie's personal hangups are really represented in a lot of us, especially during the pandemic. We're all kind of away, not necessarily for sure, but a lot of us are potentially away from family and friends and, you know, feeling kind of, you know, separate and disconnected. And so that wasn't even something that I planned on when I was writing it, but to see that resonate was interesting.
Absolutely. And I think that because these books have come out in such a condensed time period and they're all kind of almost escapist pandemic fiction. At least for me, I feel like anything that I've read that has been happy this year has been held a very special place in my heart as like getting me out of the mindset. So I think that having written, I mean, did you write the entirety of Hang the Moon during this period?
I wrote Hang the Moon in January, February of 2020. So it was slightly pre-pandemic, but all of my revisions took place during the pandemic. So I still consider it like a pandemic book of
What
mine.
were your days like in that time period? Like how did you structure your days in a time that is just so structureless, I find?
Yeah. I wrote for most of the day. I am a very fast drafter that I have a reason for it. I don't really love drafting. It's my least favorite part of the process because a blank page causes me a lot of anxiety. I just kind of want it done so that I can fix it. And so when I'm drafting, I like to just sit down, and if I can write 6,000 words a day, then I want to write that many. So I would write down and just write until I couldn't. So definitely long days for drafting.
Do you write linearly or do you write as scene as it pops into your head? Different authors have said different things about their process, and I'm always so interested.
Yeah, I definitely write linearly from start to finish. If there's something that's tripping me up, I will kind of put it in brackets and be like, return to this later, and then I'll find it in like my personal revisions. I'll go back and add it in, but I try to write, you know, completely linearly if I can.
That's awesome. And so organized.
Oh yeah, I'm a plotter, so I have spreadsheets and I have outlines and sticky notes. I mean, my wall when I'm drafting will just be covered in like pink sticky notes.
I love when authors show behind the scenes of like, just so you know, this is what my life is like until drafting is done.
See, I would do that, except for a lot of it is like sweatpants and like messy hair and buns and like not fit for public consumption.
I think some would say that's endearing in a very specific way.
True.
Are you a collaborative writer or are you kind of a lone wolf? Like, do you have like a writer group? I know so many romance writers definitely gang up.
Yeah, I have a very close group of friends that I am beyond thankful for. I would say in terms of like collaboration, I definitely bounce ideas off of them before I start writing, but then I get very in my head when I'm drafting and I'm like, okay guys, I'm going to see you in a month because I get in the zone, but they are amazing for like my morale, just my sense of self. Having them understanding what the process is like and what I'm going through is just priceless.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love that you've really, over the years, being a queer person and reading queer romance, we've gone from having like maybe one option on the bookshelf, very pulpy, to having like quite a few now, but I would still say like the ratio is not quite what it should be for how many queer people are reading and interacting with the romance genre. What has your experience been as an out queer person writing in this space and also writing for other queer people?
I've definitely felt a lot of support. I do know that, the support in the traditional space for FF has been a little slower coming than it has been for MM. But I'm definitely very, optimistic about where the trajectory for that is headed. And I feel like there's a lot of enthusiasm for that now. I definitely feel like we're headed in the right direction, and we're having a lot more options on shelves. And just looking at like the 2022 books that are scheduled to come out, I'm thrilled. I'm like over the moon about the number of queer books that are slated for 2022.
Absolutely. There's some really, really exciting ones, and even ones that are coming this fall.
Yes,
like we've got some great sapphic reads through the end of the year. And I think what I've loved about the way that you have woven queerness into your books is that like they haven't been coming out narratives. And I think that is so important, I think, to read on the page, but also for queer people who are self-actualized and moving through the world, you still want to see yourself represented on the page.
Yeah.
Is this something that you find yourself interacting with readers about? I know that your books have had a big amount of support in like Book Talk and like all of the different queer online spaces. How has that reaction been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was important for me to write stories where it wasn't a coming out narrative, because I mean, I feel like those stories are very important and very critical and definitely have a place. But I feel like they're not the only stories that need to be told. And so I've definitely gotten a lot of comments and, private messages about that, especially because I feel like, writing characters who are a little bit more confident about themselves in their late 20s or early 30s, that's the space where more people are right now. And people don't want to necessarily be constantly pulled back into that particular narrative. Absolutely.
I definitely had queer YA when I was growing up that was very formative, but also the amount that there is now where in the YA space, in the romance space, in the spaces that are kind of new adult about people in their 20s, early 20s, going into their mid 20s, I think the amount of different narratives that there are is a testament, to very strong writers, and also a publishing industry that is changing and understanding that its readers are like meeting its readers where they're at. So
absolutely.
I'm so grateful that you are writing in this space. And it's been so fun to watch the evolution of these books. So my next question would be, I asked you about your favorite characters. Do you have a particular favorite scene that comes to mind from your books so far? Without spoiling anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So in Written in the Stars, one of my favorite scenes, well, I have a number of favorite scenes, but I really love, I really love the escape room date. That was a lot of fun to write. And I that's probably a scene that I get the most messages about, because it is set in a real location in the underground of Seattle, but there is no escape room in the underground. So I took a real place, and there are really tours that go underground in Seattle, but there's no escape room, unfortunately. If anybody is in charge of that who reads my books, I think you should put an escape room down there.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite scenes. I really loved the scene, I don't want to be spoilery, where Elle brings the Christmas tree to Darcy and Written in the Stars. That was kind of a heart tug on your heartstrings kind of scene that I really loved writing. And I actually wrote that in revisions, so that wasn't originally in the first draft. And for Hang the Moon, I really love the Ferris wheel scene.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, because I personally, when I'm watching movies, I can't handle the secondhand embarrassment. Like, I'm the type of person, if there's an embarrassing scene, I'm going to dive behind the couch. Or I'm going to leave the room. I'm going to like put a pillow over my face. I can't handle it. But for some reason in books, it's completely different. And I love making my characters feel awkward, especially if it's going to lead to some sort of character growth.
Yeah.
I feel like that scene does. So that was probably my favorite scene to write in Hang the Moon.
I have shows that I have started that I have loved, and I cannot get through them because I'm just cringing too hard.
Right.
So I completely agree with you on that front. I also like that you write characters who are like fearlessly embarrassing in some ways. Like they're just willing to do it. And that's definitely how I feel as a person. So that's very fun.
Some of it for me is I feel like I aspire to that. If I was in a situation like that, I don't know if I would react the same way, but they react the way I wish that I would.
You talk about how you often have a sunshine character and a grump character. What are some of your favorite tropes in romance?
I love enemies to lovers. If I had to pick like one trope that I would just like live and die by, it would be enemies to lovers. Or I feel like in contemporary, it's never like pure enemies to lovers. It's kind of like adversaries to lovers or like dislike to lovers.
Right. It's like, unless there's like an evil throne, how enemies are you?
Exactly. Right. That's my favorite. But then I'm also a sucker for fake dating, clearly. And the trope that is most prominent in Count Your Lucky Stars is estranged best friends to lovers. And that's also a catnip for me because it's like it's friends to lovers, but it's like one step further with a little bit more angst. And I love that. And so that's in Count Your Lucky Stars.
Friends to lovers is definitely my chosen trope. So I'm really feeling like I'm going to go download this book so that I can do a quick review of it pretty fast. I'm in need of a one-day read. That's very, very fun. What are some of your favorite romance novels right now that you've been reading?
Okay, so most recently I feel very fortunate that I get to read some books ahead of time before they come out. I read A Certain Appeal, which is another kind of like Pride and Prejudice spin by Vanessa King. And it comes out later this year, 2021, I think November of 2021. It's a Pride and Prejudice retelling set in a burlesque club in New York City. And it was very fun. I loved it. And then another recent favorite read of mine is Love at First Sight by Anna E. Collins. And it comes out in January of 2022. And it is a very fun book about a woman who decides to build a very tall house to spite her ex-boyfriend who owns, or ex-fiance who owns property nearby. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's so much fun. When you write, I just love asking this question. When you write, do you listen to music?
I don't. I can't handle like lyrical distractions. I'm the type of person that I will start typing the lyrics that I'm hearing, but there are certain like TV shows that I can have on in the background if I'm very familiar with them. So I like grew up watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that's like my comfort show. And so sometimes I will have that on in the background because it's like white noise for me, basically. But in terms of music, I do put together playlists for when I'm plotting, and then I come back to them when I am revising.
Oh, that's very fun. What is a scene that has been edited out that you're still thinking of today?
Oh, okay. This is actually fun. I wrote a scene in Hang the Moon. It was a baking scene between Brendan and Annie, and it was adorable, and I loved it.
I love baking books.
And it was adorable, but it didn't work. It didn't fit, unfortunately. So I scrapped it, but I saved it in a Word document, and it ended up fitting Count Your Lucky Stars perfectly. I had to tweak it for character, like the characters wouldn't say all the same things, but a very similar iteration of that scene will appear in Count Your Lucky Stars. So I'm glad I saved it.
That's so fun. When you are writing future projects, do you think that you'll stick in the romance genre? Would you like to do other genres?
I live and die by romance. I love the happy endings and the certainty of that happy ever after. So definitely romance. I'm working on a few ideas. I'm brainstorming and plotting some new ideas. I definitely am also intrigued kind of by the paranormal romance space. Maybe not right now, but that's definitely something that I would love to venture into eventually.
I've been reading a lot in the paranormal romance space, and what I've really enjoyed is like the quick, attainable world build.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you got me there real quick.
Yeah.
Very, very fun. Do you have any types of characters or any specific characters that you find that are particularly difficult to write?
It's funny because I feel like a lot of people were asking me constantly with Written in the Stars, are you an Elle or are you a Darcy?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I put little pieces of myself into all my characters, but I feel like writing the absolutely like very hopeless romantic, almost a little Pollyanna-ish characters like Elle and like Brendan. I love them and I love writing them, but it definitely takes kind of pushing through some like I don't know if it would be like personal barriers or something to get that optimistic. I mean, I feel like I'm an optimistic person, but they are like optimistic on steroids. And so those are definitely some characters that take a little bit of reach for me.
Yeah.
And I love it, but it definitely is kind of like, okay, like let's not be jaded today.
Absolutely. And you said the most difficult part for you to write of the process is drafting. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite part?
I love revising. I actually love getting edit letters. I feel like that's a lot of people's like least favorite part. And it's nerve-wracking when you get that email from your editor into your inbox and you're like, okay, like, am I going to read it today? Am I going to wait until tomorrow morning? But I love that getting a little bit of distance and figuring out how to make a book that I already love even better. That's my favorite part, getting somebody else's eyes on it so that I can clean it up.
I think that's really, I think that people who have like good relationships with their editors and really like working with them, like you can feel it in the books, but what has your editing process been like in the past? Like who do you work with and how does that really come to fruition?
So with this book series, I write the book and I kind of sit on it for about a week and then I read over it myself and I leave myself notes and I try to revise to the best of my own ability. And then I send it to my editor. And she's amazing. I love her. I trust her so much. And then she sends me my edit letter and then I get to digest it for a few days and then dive in. When I'm working on something new, I send it to my agent and she's also amazing. I love her very much. And so she'll read over it and give me feedback. So I feel very fortunate to have people in my corner that I respect and I trust their feedback.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
I didn't. I feel like when I was younger, I went through, a lot of very typical like kid iterations of like, oh, I want to be the next Britney Spears. I want to be a professional rock climber. And then when I was in college, I actually majored in human physiology, planning to be pre-med. So my plan was to go to medical school. And then I just decided that wasn't for me. I took OChem and it was just not it. But then after that, I latched on to writing pretty quickly.
Oh, that's great. So did you write throughout college then, or did you end college with your pre-med degree?
I ended it, with my degree planning on applying to med school, and I took a little time off and I decided not to do that and to just go a different route.
Do you think medicine would ever make its way into your books?
Maybe. I used to joke that, I had like a very great understanding of the human anatomy, which helped me with my romance book. But no, I don't know. Never say never. Maybe.
I was originally listening to Written in the Stars. I've since read it in paper as well. And it like automatically teed up on my phone whenever I'd plug my phone in. And so my girlfriend got into the car and in a very spicy scene, she's like, what are you listening to? And we had a good little laugh about that. Very, very funny. All right. So I asked about music as far as writing goes, but what are you listening to in general right now? Like, what do you find particularly inspiring in the world?
Well, I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. I feel like if anybody reads my books, they can probably like suss that out pretty quickly. I mean, I even like refer to Taylor Swift a few times. She features pretty heavily on my playlists. I've been listening to a lot of Olivia Rodrigo, just, great for the angst factor. Also just like I put my Spotify on like my random like daily mixes, and I find that to actually be very helpful for, discovering music that I wouldn't normally listen to that kind of triggers something for plotting.
Very, very fun. All right, so we have an audience question. So you mentioned that you had your start in fan fiction. How do you think that AO3, and if you go back further than that, I would say LiveJournal or fanfiction.net, that's my own edit, has changed the romance genre and industry as a whole?
I would say that the tagging system on AO3 has definitely been, I think, inspired authors to pitch their work in a way that relies more heavily on tropes or the way that like AO3 would tag things. So I know that, when authors tend to kind of put their like buy links on Twitter, they tend to put like, like the kind of, they pitch it in a way that you would see in the tag system. I think the reliance on tropes has definitely been influenced by AO3, actually. At least for me, it has.
Oh, that's so interesting. And so when you were in the fanfiction space, were you mainly writing Twilight, or did you have other fandoms that you wrote for?
I only wrote Twilight fanfiction, and that was like over 10 years ago. But then I was an active reader in a lot of other spaces. But Twilight was the only community that I wrote in.
Definitely. Do you think that reading fan fiction, and this is just something that interests me, has like inspired new romance readers?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely been a gateway in terms of people kind of like maybe even like burning through the number of fics available for a pairing and then looking for original works that are similar, especially in queer romance, I think.
Yeah, I think as it is Bookstore Romance Day, we've been doing a lot of education, I think, about romance. I think that people still think of all romance as like your mom's pulpy like covers, which are still like delightful romances. And I'm like sitting next to the arc of Sarah McLean's new Bombshell, which is like going to be so fun. And like
I have that on my Kindle. Yeah,
I definitely love those for sure. But I think that like there are so many now younger, newer romance writers who are also playing with, like you said, like playing in the trope space that have always been prevalent, but almost in a way, I think that it reads so new and it reads so fun. And like, I think that you could see so many different AUs that have been established in romance now, or for folks who are watching, alternate universes. From like maybe what an original relationship was to now what it has been inspired as a romance novel. So I think that's always very fun, is to play with an original concept and then to move it over. And
definitely. So
Pride and Prejudice inspired Written in the Stars. Did you have any other inspiration from Austen and Hang the Moon or in Margot's story?
Nothing that I would say connected as directly as Pride and Prejudice did for Written in the Stars. For Hang the Moon, I definitely envisioned, well, maybe more so in Written in the Stars, I envisioned Brendan as kind of like this Bingley-esque character.
I also did too, and I was trying to make sure that I was on base with that.
Yeah, definitely. So that was kind of like how I envisioned him in Written in the Stars. And then in Hang the Moon, there was a very, 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 very subtle inspiration from like Emma in terms of him being kind of this like meddlesome matchmaker and meaning very well, but his execution wasn't always there. So I wouldn't say that it was like a direct inspiration, and I don't even reference it that much because I'm sure some people will be like, oh, it was nothing like Emma, but just his character was a little bit inspired by that.
And also the date aspect and like bringing up so many different like visuals that are so entrenched in romance. I mean, I think it's romance for people who love romance, inspired by the love of romance. And I think
right. Yeah. I consider like Hang the Moon to be my love letter to Seattle and my love letter just to the genre as a whole.
And how does Count Your Lucky Stars fit in that?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like Count Your Lucky Stars is kind of, Margot just took on a life of her own and just kind of rolled with it. It's for, I guess Count Your Lucky Stars is kind of romance for people who don't believe in romance and then get blindsided by romance.
That's so fun. We have a comment that says, "You Are in Love" by Taylor Swift is so Brendan Annie.
Yeah, like I said, Taylor Swift definitely featured heavily in all the playlists. When I was writing Hang the Moon, I was listening to Cruel Summer on replay. And so that was kind of the
This should have
song.
been single Cruel Summer.
Yeah. But there are so many Taylor Swift songs that I feel like are representative of their relationship.
That's so fun. How do you engage? I think that in this new age, we have such a bookish community on the internet. How do you engage with that book community? Are you on Bookstagram? Are you on Book Talk? How do you BookTube? All of the different things.
I'm pretty active on both Twitter and on Instagram. I have an account on TikTok, but I am not active really. I watch a lot of TikTok videos, but I haven't filmed any. But I'm active on Instagram and on Twitter, and I love posting and engaging in DMs. I try to keep up. Sometimes I fall behind, but I think that it's a great direct means of communication, and I really like that, and I love being able to connect with readers that closely.
Definitely. Have you had any readers reach out to you and say that you've inspired them to write their stories? What advice have you given folks who want to start writing themselves?
Yeah, I have. I have received some of those messages, and I'm really excited I'm actually a Pitch Wars mentor this year for anybody.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with Pitch Wars, but it's a mentorship program where published or agented authors select, an unagented author to kind of mentor. And so I'm excited about that. And so whenever I get messages, I'm very happy to answer any questions about how the process works, because I feel like in any industry, especially this industry, transparency is really key. And I don't want any part of the process to be fuzzy for anybody.
How did you learn about it? I feel like it can also be really confusing for people. I hear so many writers say, oh, I've known I was going to do this my entire life. I went to school for it, and then it was clean cut from there. So how did the curtain get pulled back for you?
So I wrote a really terrible book in 2014 that will never see the light of day. It is like in a drawer, tucked away under lock and key. But I joined Twitter shortly after that. It was in 2014, and I discovered Pit Mad and Pitch Wars, and that just kind of illuminated the process for me in terms of what is involved in finding an agent, how to query an agent. So I kind of stumbled on it. I definitely didn't major in it or anything like that. I took one creative writing class in college, but other than that, none of the process was clear for me. I just kind of stumbled around in the dark and then found some communities, and I feel very lucky that I found those communities then.
What would you say to young writers as advice?
My number one piece of advice would be to find other writers, not only to, beta read your work and critique your work, but just to have a close community of writer friends that understand what those highs and lows look like. So because it can be a little lonely at times, sitting in front of your computer and writing a book, and the process today is definitely not what the process was like 20 or 30 years ago. And so sometimes family members don't understand, what it takes to get an agent. I know that my grandparents, for instance, were like, you wrote a book, you send it to New York, right? You just pop it in the mailbox. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more to it than that. So finding a community of people who are going through it would be my number one piece of advice. Just to have that support system is really important.
I think that that's really wonderful. And I think that's another area that I think fan fiction has done for people, is to create pockets of writing communities. And I definitely think that exists on Twitter, and I definitely think that exists on Instagram. And there's a lot of online spaces that make it easier to do it than having to live in New York or having to live in the big cities where people. Absolutely. All right, so I have a few rapid fire questions that we always ask folks before they leave.
Okay.
Also, if you have more audience questions, please drop them in the chat. Alexandria, do you have a personal favorite season?
Fall, for sure.
Then you must be excited.
I'm very excited, yeah, especially because I'm in Florida right now, so it's so hot. So
it's also so hot here. It's been really, really. I've had to become very comfortable with my shoulders this year. What do you order at a coffee shop?
Black Americano.
Ooh, straight up.
Just black coffee. Yep.
What book would you bring with you to a deserted island?
Oh gosh, that is so difficult. Oh God. I would probably say one of Christina Lauren's earlier books, like Sweet Filthy Boy, maybe. That's like a comfort read of mine. So yeah, I would go with that.
Oh, that's fun. What book are you reading right now?
I currently have an advanced reader copy of Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake on my e-reader.
I'm also reading that right now.
Yes, so that's what I'm reading right now.
I love her middle grade and her YA. I'm very excited for her to venture into adult.
Same.
What's your go-to meal to cook?
I love breakfast and I love making homemade pancakes. And I have a recipe for red velvet pancakes that I like to whip out to impress people.
I'm impressed and I haven't even seen the pancakes. So I believe it. Post-COVID, what's the first place that you'd like to travel?
Ooh, I want to go on a European trip to London and Paris.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you prefer insta-love or slow burn?
Ooh, I like a slow burn, but with insta attraction. So they are instantly attracted to each other, but it takes a while for their hearts to match the rest of them.
I love a very particular trope. Great. Would you prefer to be connected to your Wi-Fi or would you prefer to be offline?
Ooh, I would say, oh God, that's so tough. I would say right now with the pandemic, I like being connected because it's my way of staying connected with my friends. But otherwise, I do like being able to disconnect and kind of escape and, touch some grass.
Touch some grass is my favorite internet phrase in general right now. Very good. Well, it has been so wonderful having you on with us today, Alexandria. I know that our entire team loves your books. I know that our audience loves your books. And so we're so excited to carry and to sell Written in the Stars and Hang the Moon. If you come today for Bookstore Romance Day, these books are included with signed book plates. They're going to be here throughout the week. They're available for 10% off in the store. And if you want to pre-order Count Your Lucky Stars, that would be awesome. We really, really appreciate pre-orders. They help authors like Alexandria. They help bookstores like us. And thank you so much. How else are you celebrating Bookstore Romance Day?
I had an event an hour before this, and I stopped into another local bookstore to sign. I have another panel at 5 o'clock.
So fun.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty busy day, but a lot of fun.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for supporting local indies like ours and the one near you. And I am sure that we will talk soon. And congratulations on the series. They are all so much fun. And I hope that you have an excellent fall as we move into autumn.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.